They been cramping my style all week. Craving chocolate trees, checking pants, checking seeds, sipping herbal tea, and fight for menstrual equity. Jeez, man, I kick Cramp's ass. 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 You're now tuned in to the Kick Cramp's Ass podcast with your host, Brittany Walker, advocating for menstrual equity, period poverty, and womb wellness. New episodes on Menstruation Mondays.
Happy Menstruation Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Kick Cramp's Ass podcast, where I'm your host, Brittany Walker, and you've made it to episode 26 in season 2, where we'll be talking about period poverty in prisons. It is Monday, September 16, 2024, and we are so excited about the guest that we have today, Miss Regan Moss, and we'll bring her on in just a moment. But she's a program director, a policy and program analyst, and a program manager, and so much more, advocating for menstruation. So we're so excited to speak with her. It is September, so September is Yoga Awareness Month. So we have launched our Pilates for Periods program. So we're so excited about that, and we'll make sure that we keep giving you guys details on that program that's going to give you moves and positions that you can do to help you get rid of your period pain or period symptoms that you may be having, balancing those hormones, and then just advocating for having period power, taking your power back, and managing a more easier menstrual cycle process. All right, guys. And September is also Sexual Health Awareness Month. So we'll be giving sexual health awareness tips all month long, and we're so excited about that. Now, we like to kick off each episode with the I am power statement. I representing inspiration, A representing affirmations, and M representing manifestations. And the I am power statement for today is, I am understanding the various levels of period poverty and will be open-minded on how to advocate for it. Ashe. So there it is. We also like to give a quote of the day. So today's is, nobody should ever be forced to put their health in jeopardy or suffer embarrassment or stigmas because they are unable to pay for their menstrual products. And yet I have heard stories of girls using the fillings of their stuffed animals as makeshift pads. And that was actually by U.S. Representative Grace Ming. All right, guys. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick sip of this good old Cramp elixir. We're always sipping on it each episode. And we're going to cut to a commercial break, and we'll be right back with you guys. Have you tried our bestseller, the Cramp elixir? It's our herbal tea blend designed to reduce and eliminate menstrual cramps, PMS symptoms, and other uterine health issues that are hindering your day-to-day progress. Our elixir may decrease inflammation, reduce stress and anxiety, regulate blood flow, balance your mood, and it can kick Cramp's ass. It includes a variety of herbs including hibiscus, red raspberry leaf, calendula, motherwort, ashwagandha, plus more. Head over to kickcrampsass.org and grab yours today. Now, back to the show. Guys, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed that quick commercial break. We are so excited about today's guest. We are going to have Regan Moss. Now, she goes by she and her titles are as follows. She's on the board of directors for Period. She's on the board of directors for the International Association for Premenstrual Disorders. She's also a Tulane representative for the Cross Center Collaboration for Justice Involved Women and Children. She's also a policy and programs analyst at the Policy Center for Maternal Mental Health, and she's also a maternal, neonatal, and child program manager at Global Health Promise. Now, she has her master's in public health from Columbia University, and she's currently a PhD student and researcher in Tulane University's Department of Social, Behavioral, and Population Health Sciences, and an adjunct instructor and researcher at Auburn University. Her research examines the interactions between social contextual factors and the environment and psychobiological mechanisms impacting maternal and reproductive health outcomes and disease risk across the life course. Now, she integrates social epidemiology and policy law perspectives to examine how health, maternal, and reproductive health disparities arise and conducts patient centered research to gather perspectives and experiences of patients who are systems who systems are marginalized to promote equity and practice inform institutional, local, and state policy to address health inequities in rural southern United States of America. Now, she conducted the first qualitative study on menstruating and incarcerating in the US. Now, if y'all had signed up for our newsletter, you should have seen that because we promoted that on our in our newsletter and on our social media outlets. And she is currently the PI of Menstruation and Incarceration, which explores how women in prison navigate their menstrual health and reproductive disorders. Okay, guys, please welcome Regan Moss to the show. Hello, Reagan.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. It is such a pleasure to have you on. It is going to be an amazing conversation. We've been waiting on this, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So, may you please tell us more about yourself? I know that was a mouthful that we gave you guys, but there's so many other things that she is involved with. And tell us more about yourself and the organizations that you work with to advocate for period poverty.
I have a lengthier bio, so apologies about that. I'm really interested in all things maternal and reproductive health and the role of policy in promoting equitable outcomes. And so, as far as what that means for menstrual health, I work really closely with Period. I'm on the board of directors at Period. And Period is a youth led, we're a part of a youth led movement and we work to tackle period poverty and the social stigmas surrounding menstruation. So I got engaged in Period back in 2019 when I was an undergrad. I was going to school in East Alabama, and my menstrual cycle became super, super painful in college. And so I turned to online resources and whatever I could find to try and make sense of that. And that's where I came across Period. And I really resonated with all of the it's predominantly youth led, like I mentioned. So I really resonated with that space and yeah, really excited to be on the board of directors currently. And then, as you mentioned, I'm also on the board of directors for the International Association for Premenstrual Disorders. And I'm really excited to be leading up their youth advisory board. We're getting that together at the moment. And as an organization, we work to educate people about premenstrual disorders like PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and other mental health related menstrual conditions. And with the Youth Advisory Council, I'm really excited because we're going to be able to bring in the perspectives of young adults that have PMDD and PME and use that to inform education and clinical practice and policy change.
This is so amazing. You just gave so many great resources. And again, guys, for our listeners that are our younger audience, Period is an amazing organization that you can look into. You should be able to go into social media and literally type Period. I believe that they own like that name across the board on social media outlets. So that's so amazing. Thank you for that. So let's talk about what galvanized you to advocate for period poverty. I know you just explained you were having issues when you were in college, but is there anything else that contributed to you wanting to be pretty much like a menstrual activist?
Yeah, no, good question. So, yeah, I think I selfishly joined the movement in the beginning, which I think I've connected with other advocates that say the same thing, right? Like, you can't reliably get resources from your employer, from a teacher, from your doctor. And so you have to become a self advocate first and find those resources in other ways. And so that's initially how I entered the space. And then as far as like my awareness of period poverty, it really started out looking at when you break down period poverty, there's of course the material access part of period poverty, but there's also the lack of menstrual education. And that's really what I resonated with first. And after I became more aware of definition of period poverty and moving beyond my own experience with inadequate menstrual education, was exposed to how rampant period poverty is, and was able to really engage with other advocates throughout the Southeast and in Alabama to learn more about that, and then figure out, because there's so many people within this space, so trying to figure out what my role within this space is, if I needed to have a role within the space. And that's really where I found that my role could be focusing on people that are incarcerated and managing menstruation.
Absolutely. And I love that you broke down the difference in period poverty. There are a lot of people that just assume that it's okay, you can't afford your menstrual products, you're suffering because you may live in, socioeconomical issues are affecting you. But people really don't realize lack of menstrual education, lack of any type of reproductive health, sexual health, anything surrounding your womb, your uterus, your vagina, that could be a part of period poverty. So I love that you insinuated that. All right. So let's talk about, you co-wrote an amazing article, Redefining Menstrual Equity in Prisons, Why Menstrual Equity Demands Prison Abolition, which we're going to include in the link of this episode, guys, so you could check out as well. But may you please provide a synopsis to the guests and elaborate on key takeaways that will make them want to go read more and discover more for themselves.
Yes. Yeah, so that article is pretty densely packed. So I'll break it down and give a synopsis. So my co-author and I, Miriam Vishniak, who's a doctoral student in Scotland, we started off the article by describing day to day, cycle to cycle, what it's like to manage your period pain, menses, all of the symptoms that come with having a period, what that experience is like for people that are incarcerated. And Miriam and I were not writing from firsthand experience, but we were writing about what we knew from the research that we've both done with people that are incarcerated, and also pulling from all of the different stories that women directly impacted have written about, in so many phenomenal news articles. And so, we started off the article by walking people through that process, right? And trying to imagine the things that you do every single day to manage your cycle, putting that in the context of the prison system, it's impossible. And then we move further into thinking about, is it possible to have a solution? Is it possible to eradicate period poverty within the prison system? So we know that there's some low-hanging fruit, and things like maybe just put period products in the restrooms, right? That's a great place to start. Making sure that period products are free. You don't have to go to the commissary and spend everything to your name in order to buy a tampon. But then as we kind of end the article, we really challenge if those in and of themselves can really end period poverty when we think about how complicated our cycles are, right? So if you think about endometriosis and what it's like to manage your cycle when you have endo, or you think about someone with premenstrual dysphoric disorder when they're trying to manage their cycle, what is that like? And we think about how unique everyone's cycle is. It's pretty impossible to standardize care for everyone in this hyper-controlled, surveilled system and expect everyone to feel dignified and like they have autonomy over their own bodies. And then, finally, I think another major point within that article is a new dimension of period poverty, which I introduced in an article we have under review. It hasn't been published yet, which is this social dimension of period poverty. So you might have period products, you might have education, but if you are ashamed and people are stigmatizing you, right? Like you can't feel dignified in that sense either. And within the prison system, we know that it's inherent to how that system is set up to control and surveil and shame people. And so ultimately we argue it's impossible to eradicate period poverty within that system.
Absolutely. I love that you talked about feeling dignified while they're incarcerated. My loctician, for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a hairstylist that just specializes in locks, but she is a prison guard. And so I was like, hey, let me know how I can donate products. I'm all about organic, all natural. And she was like, don't do that, because some of the prisoners are already like, hey, I only use organic, and if you're not giving me organic, I'm not using it. And she was like, they can't be bougie like that. And I said, but they can, because if they're aware
Mm-hmm.
of, hey, I don't want to use this specific product because of PFAs, certain chemicals, or like you said, I'm suffering from endometriosis, I just can't use certain things. I can't have this thing because it's silicone, or I can't have this specific type of
Right.
cotton. They have the right to voice what they deserve, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I love that you mentioned about them feeling dignified. And then that rolls into our next question. So I feel like many individuals are not aware of what menstruating prisoners really go through. I know that there was a case earlier this year, maybe towards the end of 2023, where a prison guard finally got caught because he was soliciting period products in exchange for sexual favors. And people think that, oh, that's weird. That doesn't happen that often. You would be shocked. And like you said, if you're going through pain, what you have to do to deal with pain, how are you making a heating pad? How are you doing certain things to sustain?
Mm-hmm.
Not having access to certain herbs that could be helpful for you, maybe a tea that works for you. So, can we discuss what influenced you to be a voice for these individuals?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think my initial entry into the work is similar to the story that you just shared, where an officer was caught, or several officers were caught. Um, I think legally it would be considered sexual exploitation,
Right.
right? To sexually assault someone in exchange for period products. So that's how I initially became aware of the issue, because I went to undergrad in Alabama, and the women's prison there was under investigation by the Department of Justice, exactly for that issue and a million other issues. And so I was like, weirdly, over like Thanksgiving break one year, very curious to learn more about that story. And so I poured through the report and kind of went down a rabbit hole trying to understand what movement had been generated within the state to try and address that specific issue of period products and accountability for officers and accountability for wardens to ensure these products are being provided. And when I went down that rabbit hole, I realized there was really no mechanism for accountability within Alabama and pretty much every state within the US. There's no accountability for people to ensure that they're getting period products, and if they're not, they can report it. Um, and I also noticed that there was some movement within the state to try and make it to where a minimum amount of products were required, which would be written into the Department of Corrections handbook. Um, and so, because of that, myself and my co-PI, Haley Fenn, who's a grad student at the time, we went and we interviewed people that were exiting the women's prison. And we were able to speak with people before this policy was passed, and then after the policy was passed, supposedly increasing access to period products. And what we found was that it really had changed nothing within the prison system. Even if folks were able to access period products, they couldn't regularly shower, or they couldn't regularly do their laundry and clean, if they got blood on their bedding or their clothing. People couldn't regularly get access to painkiller or to heating pads or anything that helped them feel dignified. And so because of that, I realized, like so many other people, there's a pretty serious gap between what is written in policy and what is happening in practice.
Right.
And the obvious solution to that is advocacy work, right? When we supposedly are addressing an issue in writing, everything is great, but we're speaking to people and hearing about their stories and realizing that's not the reality. And so that's how I decided to really get engaged with the rights of people that are incarcerated and their menstrual well-being. And yeah, I will flag one other thing. I feel like when you're talking about, many people within the menstrual equity space don't always seem aware of period poverty within prisons. I think we're falsely taught sometimes that period poverty is only a function of socioeconomic insecurity. And very often it is. And we have to have that equity lens in order to make sure that we are helping, actually genuinely having effective policy, right? We're not just giving period products to a bunch of private schools or, people who have material resources. We have
Exactly.
to have, yes, allocate things. But I think another form of period poverty is state manufactured. And we see that within the context of prisons. They provide people with toilet paper. They're willfully choosing not to give people adequate supplies of menstrual products. And as we see carried out, officers take advantage of that and they sexually exploit people. And so, yeah, just I think it's a pretty big gap within the menstrual equity space to not also kind of broaden our lens and consider how policies or inadequate policies can be leveraged to create instances of period poverty that otherwise would not exist.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's all about the advocacy. They have the policies, they're just not being enforced. And then you have a lot of individuals that might not care about the situation because they're closed minded to, well, they're prisoners. They're still menstruators, they're still human beings. There's a lot of people that are in prison that are wrongfully imprisoned, so you just can't assume just because of whatever they did, they still are human beings and they need to be treated as such. So I love that you
Exactly.
went into full detail about what influenced you to be that voice. It's an amazing reasons why you're doing it. And thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate you. Can you tell us more about the Periods in Prison curriculum and toolkit that you developed? And that's something, guys, that we're also going to include in the description of this episode.
Sweet. Yeah. So that curriculum we put out last year, Period, and the Thurman Perry Foundation. So myself and Gabrielle Perry of the Thurman Perry Foundation co-authored that curriculum. And so, yeah, Gabrielle, I know at one instance came to Period and they talked about building out a curriculum. And then I came to Period as a board member separately and talked about the need for a curriculum. So it was awesome to see, there was an obvious need there. Yes. So yeah, I was interested in building out a curriculum because like I said, had interviewed a bunch of people that were exiting Tutwiler prison. And I have a few ongoing studies focused on menstruation or reproductive health in prisons. But all of those things take so long to move from data collection to something that's clean and publishable to even being published. And then it's a matter of, can people even access the article, right? Like academia can be really inaccessible.
Yes.
And so, yeah, period's very accessible, right? So it's like, how do we take this knowledge that sure should be published in a journal? It does contribute to our understanding of menstruation in an academic sense, but it also demands action in the immediate sense from advocates. And so the curriculum is really focused on building the foundational knowledge of anyone that uses it on period poverty, but specifically period poverty within prisons in the US. And so we walk people through why products are inaccessible, the poor quality of a lot of products, the really, really low supply of products. Like there are so many different reasons why someone is not going to be able to adequately manage their cycle while they're in prison. And that's what we walk them through in the curriculum. And in the end, we kind of challenge them to think about, what does this mean within your local context? It's really meant to be used by advocates in collaboration with other people in their communities to try and increase access to products within jails and prisons in their area. If they are interested in passing policy on the state level, that can be a little complicated when it comes to prisons, but not impossible. Similarly with jails, it gets, it's so different county to county and state to state, but we really try and give them all the foundational information they would need so they can figure out in their context what's the best next step for people in their area.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, such an amazing toolkit. We'll definitely be sure to make sure you guys have access to that. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with you. Now, navigating to our resource center, we want to give you guys access to all these complimentary resources that we have available for you. We have our blog, book suggestions, our menstrual blood chart, exercise moves to kick Cramp's ass. We have recipes. We have reports. We have research studies that helps to prove how holistic approaches assist with achieving women wellness. We have wellness tips, wellness referrals, so business organizations and individuals that we would like to refer to you that are our strategic partners, wound terminology. Maybe there's some wound options that you're not aware of. This can help you out. And lastly, yoga moves to help you kick Cramp's ass. Feel free to take advantage of this complimentary resource. All right, guys, now back to the show. All right, guys, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed that commercial break. So, Regan, congratulations on your recent achievement for your master's degree and for pursuing your doctoral degree. What research are you hoping to expose in the coming years?
Yes, good question. So I might have alluded earlier that we are doing another phase of work focused on menstruation in carceral spaces. And so we're expanding beyond period poverty from the perspective of like menstrual education and products and wash. And we're moving into jails and detention facilities as well to study people's experiences in those contexts. And then we're going to be conducting a bunch of focus groups this fall to speak to people about what it's like if you identify like I have severe pain or I'm bleeding a lot, maybe I have cysts, and you want to go get healthcare while you're in the prison system. Yeah. What is that process like, and how is it, do you even get quality care, right? And we're going to be working with people who are recently incarcerated, not presently, because we're really interested to see, maybe after they got out of prison, they were able to find a good OBGYN, fingers crossed, and maybe that OBGYN was able to say, actually, you've had cyst for the past 5 years, right? And people inside working in the healthcare there were not giving you adequate support. So yeah, we're going to be doing those focus groups, continuing with some interviews, and then we're going to be launching a national survey to try and understand how common menstrual disorders are within this space. And the hope with all of this is to influence policy, but also by getting an understanding of menstrual disorders, we can do some education with providers working with this population, because providers are another community of people that can often be unaware of the impacts of period poverty. And especially with this population, it's really overlooked. So yeah, those are next directions with that study. And then we have a bit of ongoing work focused on the impact psychologically and sexually for people that have menstrual disorders. That's outside of the prison system. That's like broadly looking at people of reproductive age who might have amenorrhea or dysmenorrhea. And I'm wanting to understand how that impacts people's quality of life outside of the difficulties in managing their cycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you kind of already answered the next question. So I'm going to ask it and then we can just throw a little more sauce on it. But what changes or improvements are you aiming to implement with your work? So you listed quite a bit already, but is there anything else that besides us, advocacy and trying to enforce policies and trying to implement specific programs, reduce poverty, what else could be done? What else could be achieved from what you're wanting to do?
Yeah. So I think a few hopefully really tangible things. We, knock on wood, are going to be able to introduce some menstrual education within prison arts project and programs, which are present in so many states. So if anyone listening works with a prison arts and education program, it's a great way to work with people who already have trust in a program, and the prison system is already, working with those organizations. So yeah, we're hoping to introduce menstrual education, working on finalizing that curriculum and making sure it's truly relevant to people within prisons. And then I think another thing that everyone can do, and is a goal of this research, is to increase opportunities for accountability. So if someone was incarcerated and they were assaulted by a guard in exchange for a period product, right? Or they had a horrible experience trying to get healthcare support for their cycle, being able to build out mechanisms and education for people that are formerly incarcerated so they're aware of their rights and they're able, to see it through and see change within the system.
I love that. I love that. This is such amazing information, guys. I am so excited about everything that's being implemented. And like you said, connecting with, and you said that's the prisons and arts like organizations that are within the actual states, or can they be on like a city level as well?
Yeah. So most of the ones that I'm familiar with, they are already partnered with facilities, like those programs that help people, get their bachelor's while they're incarcerated. Easy way to introduce a course on health, right? Maybe it's broader and you're looking at comprehensive sex ed, or you're looking at menstrual health education, bringing people that knowledge that should be in public school systems, also bringing that within education systems in prisons and jails,
Absolutely.
or not jails, it's usually prisons.
Absolutely. Okay. I love it. So, what do you know more about? We're going to shift gears a little bit away from period poverty in the prisons. What do you know more, or what do you know now about your period that was not introduced to you by the time that you had started your menstrual cycle?
Yeah, I think the period pain is not normal. Um, yeah, when you're growing up, everyone just makes jokes
Yeah.
about how awful your cycle is and how awful it's going to be. And there are memes about pain and PMS. And so many of the things are normalized that are actually red flags for some serious health issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because the majority of the guests that I have on, I ask the same question. And pretty much that's what everybody says. Like, hey, it was normalized. It was told, like, yay, womanhood, go get your pad, go get your tampon. You're going to be in pain each month for the next 40 to 50 years. So get used to it and just suck it up. It's a part of womanhood. And it's like, no, we're not supposed to experience certain things. No, periods are supposed to be normal and not painful. And I think people misconstrue too the shedding process for pain. When we talk about pain, we're talking
Mhm.
about cramps, inflammation, sharpness. We're not talking about the actual process of the shedding. That's uncomfortable, but the pain, you shouldn't experience pain. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add to what I was saying too about like my early experiences in college. I think a lot of people in college get on that cycle of like little sleep, a lot of
Yeah.
caffeine, poor nutrition, and just how that can make your cycle even worse, and being able to have a better understanding of how important sleep is, even though it's hard to come by sometimes when you're in school, how critical that is for your cycle.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, we always talk about lower the caffeine, let it go. I know it's so good, but it's not good for our wombs. Our wombs do not like it. So, do you have like a regimen or like a ritual that you do to prepare for your menstrual cycle? Like, hey, I track my cycle, so I know it's coming. So, I want this specific food. Give me this specific drink. I like my favorite socks. Do you have one?
Yeah, I do track my cycle. I'm a pen and paper kind of person. Um, and yeah, I just eat sweets and I let myself eat sweets and I let myself enjoy eating sweets. I think that's my ritual, is just enjoying what I want to enjoy and what I need at that phase within the month, and not trying to overthink, too much about if I'll regret it later. I just, enjoy it. And I used to do Pilates and yoga a lot around my cycle. And when you shared earlier at the beginning of the episode, that totally reminds me that I used to do that. So I should bring that back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Great tips. So, are there any last remarks or comments that you would like to share with us before we close out for the day?
Yeah, I'll just connecting back to advocacy work and period poverty within carceral spaces, I would encourage anyone that's interested in making a change to connect with other people in your local area who are formerly incarcerated, who are directly supporting people within the prison system, and building coalitions between the traditional menstrual equity movement and the leaders within prison abolition or the rights of people that are incarcerated in those spaces. And I think together, that gives us a unified front, but we're also able to speak to our individual expertise as movements. And I think, together there are a lot of possibilities there to improve conditions within prisons and reconsider the necessity of the prison system to begin with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's some great information, guys. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with you. Welcome to kickcrampsass.org. Now, feel free to subscribe and get 15% off. By doing so, you're subscribing to our newsletter and you'll receive the latest news, resources, and updates. We appreciate you for connecting with us, so we want to get you with 15% off on your first order. So go ahead and leave your first name, your last name, and your email address, and you'll have this 50% off coupon that you can use towards your first order. Now, back to the show. All right, guys, we hope that you enjoyed that commercial break. So to recap, guys, we talked about period poverty in prisons and how important it is for us to spread more advocacy and see how we can contribute and be an aid to assist these individuals. Because again, most people don't realize what these prisoners go through and what they don't have accessibility to. And with us having our freedom and having accessibility to do what we need when we're on our cycles, we want to just try to lend a helping hand and help them. All right, guys. So we had Regan Moss on. So we're going to go ahead and, if you don't mind, Regan, let's talk about any events that you have coming up.
Yeah, so around Period Action Day this October, I'm going to be hosting an event with Dr. Christine Drew focused on ableism and the menstrual equity space. And so if anyone is interested in learning more about that event as we fine-tune details, you can connect with me. My email is rmoss3@tulane.edu, and I can send over all the event details.
Absolutely. And guys, we'll be sure to keep that information as well in the description of the bio, so you'll be able to keep up with it. And then on our end, guys, just wrapping up Yoga Month, we want to make sure that we are prepping you for the challenge we're going to have in October, doing either one yoga or Pilates pose per day. That's going to help better your menstrual cycle journey. All right, guys, we're still accepting listeners' mail, so feel free to comment on this episode, or if you would like a more intimate or personalized approach, you can email us at contact@kickcrampsass.org, which will be listed in the description of the episode as well. Be sure to like the podcast, share it with somebody that you feel that can resonate. Also, be sure to subscribe to our website. Not only will you get a 15% off discount through our KCA store, but you will also have access to the latest news, resources, events, and everything that we have going on. And also subscribe to our YouTube pages at Kick Cramps Ass and at Pilates for Periods, where you'll be able to receive additional content. Now, we appreciate all of you for tuning in on this good old Menstruation Monday, and we want to send gratitude out to all of you, and we manifest that you have a positive, productive, and peaceful remainder of your day, your week, and a menstrual journey ahead. And we'll be talking to you on next Menstruation Monday. Peace.